Hello, welcome to BM6611 Managing Brands, session 16, which is all about introducing and naming new products and brand extensions. And this is part of the overall topic of branding strategy. The reading to accompany this session is the paper by Aker and Joachimsthaler, published in 2000, called The Brand Relationship Spectrum: The Key to the Brand Architecture Challenge, published in California Management Review. And there are some additional readings listed here, which you can dip into if you want to look at the topic in more depth and detail. So, in the last session, we looked at brand strategy and we found out that it's extremely important for an organisation to have a branding strategy to decide on the number of brands and the relationship between them. It's an organising structure, if you like, in the brand portfolio. And we saw how the branding strategy specifies the roles that specific brands play and also the nature of the relationships between them. And we looked at two important strategic tools, the brand product mix matrix and the brand hierarchy, both of which help organisations to clarify and define the relationships between the products and the brands within their portfolio. In this session, we're going to look at a complementary tool, the brand relationship spectrum, as set out in Aker and Joachimsthaler's paper. And here it is. This is the brand relationship spectrum. It looks pretty much similar to the way it's set out in the original paper, but I've changed the example brands on the right-hand side of the slide. It's a tree diagram, as you can see, and it has 4 main strategies, each of which is divided into 2 or 3 sub-strategies. So we'll start at the top and work our way down. The first strategy in the brand relationship spectrum is called the House of Brands. And as the name suggests, this is a strategy where an organisation has a large number of individual brands within its portfolio. And generally there will be very little or no relationship between them. In some cases, there won't even be much of a connection to the owning company. That company will play a have a very low profile and will not endorse the individual brands in any way. And an example there is Premier Foods. Or alternatively, the owning company can take a very, very shadow role, a very light endorsement, as in the case of H&M and its various brands. The next main strategy in Aker and Joachimsthaler's brand relationship spectrum is endorsed brands. And here there are 3 sub-strategies: the token endorser, the linked name, and the strong endorser. And as we move down through these 3 sub-strategies, the strength of the endorsing brand increases from a very token level to a very, very strong level. The third strategy is sub-brands, and here we have 2 brands working together, driving consumer choice. So in the case of co-drivers such as Gillette Venus or Gillette Mach 3, the 2 brand names are equal in their power of driving brand choice. The fact that it's Gillette is important. The fact that it's Venus, a known brand of women's shaving products, is equally important. The other sub-strategy in the sub-brand strategy is master brand as driver, and the example given there is Windows. We have Windows 10, etc., and all the other Windows, but it's the Windows brand that is dominant. So the master brand is becoming ever more dominant as we move down through the strategies. And the most extreme example of this is the final strategy, the branded house, where pretty much there is only 1 brand name. And the examples that I'm showing are Virgin and Nike. Nike is the most consistent use of a branded house, where all the Nike products have the same identity. The Nike brand is displayed in exactly the same way, total consistency across the entire product portfolio. With Virgin, there are very slight differences in identity between the various business areas that the brand is put on, and words are used a bit like brand modifiers to identify the different business areas: Virgin Trains, Virgin Active, Virgin Money, etc. So let's look at some of these strategies in a little bit more detail. When we think about introducing a new product into an organisation portfolio, we've effectively got three options from a branding point of view. We can develop a completely new standalone brand, and that would be part of a house of brand strategy, a new brand that has no connection with anything else that exists. So that's what Toyota did when they entered the luxury car market. They developed a new brand from scratch, Lexus, had no connection with Toyota whatsoever. The second option is to use some sort of combination of a new and an existing brand name. And that's the middle strategies in the Aker and Jochimsthaler brand relationship spectrum, the endorsed brand and the sub-brand strategies, where you've got something new and something which has been around for a while coming together, shown side by side on the brand and the packaging, etc. And the third option is simply to apply an existing brand with nothing new. And this takes place in the branded house strategy, where a company brand or a family brand is used. Each time a new product is launched, it is launched under the company brand name or a family brand name. Options 2 and 3 are known as brand extension strategies. So let's think about the first option, developing a completely new brand from scratch in the House of Brands strategy. I mentioned that Premier Foods and H&M are examples, and all of these bits of text and indeed the images are hyperlinked. So when you download the slides from Canvas, you can click through and look at these organisations in more depth and detail. Premier Foods has a very wide range of brands in the food products and the food category area, such as Bird's Custard and Bisto Gravy Powder and Angel Delight Instant Desserts and Saxa Salt and many others. There's absolutely no relationship between them at all. Each has their own unique brand name, brand elements, brand identity. And indeed, there's no connection with Premier Foods. Premier Foods does not seek to build a corporate brand. It doesn't endorse these products in any way. H&M is a Swedish fashion company, and it has extended its business by introducing a number of different brands such as COS, Arquette, and Other Stories, and some others. And those are endorsed by H&M, but in a relatively light touch way. So H&M doesn't pretend that it doesn't own these brands. It's very open about that, and you can see that H&M is the parent company, but in the background, very much in the background, to allow the brands to stand and shine on their own. So these are two strategies whereby when you launch a new brand, you do it as a completely standalone entity, either with absolutely no endorsement from the parent company or a very light or shadowy level of endorsement. And the idea here is that the new brand should have its own distinctive, unique identity and stand completely alone. Now, Nestle, being such a large organisation and owning in excess of 2,000 brands, which are sold in more than 150 countries around the world, as you can imagine, it has a complex branding strategy, and it actually has a hybrid branding strategy. It uses a number of Aker and Jochimsthaler's strategies within its overall portfolio across its whole business. If we look at Nestlé's bottled water business, and there's a hyperlink at the bottom of the slide which will take you through to a website with more information about the range of bottled water brands that Nestlé markets. If we just look at bottled water, we can see examples of where Nestlé uses the House of Brands strategy. And it does this in its premium sector, where it has two premium brands, Perrier and San Pellegrino. And it also uses a House of Brands strategy for what are called local brands, brands that are very meaningful in particular countries or particular regions of countries. And an example from its portfolio here in the UK would be Buxton Water. So this is Nestlé creating a number of unique standalone brands that have very little apparent connection with Nestlé and no relationship with any other brand within Nestlé's bottled water portfolio. Now, the advantage of this house of brands or brand portfolio strategy are many and varied. It's a way to, in a sense, fragment a market, to occupy different spaces in a market, to divide a market up into more segments, and as a result, make it less attractive for competitors, make it more difficult for competitors. If an organisation has multiple brands in the same market, each positioned differently, each targeting a different demographic or behavioural or psychographic segment, then it's sewing up a lot of the market, which makes it difficult for competitors to gain any kind of foothold. Another important advantage of the House of Brands strategy comes from each brand being unique and self-contained and having no apparent connection with any other brands, and indeed not much of a connection or none at all, no apparent connection with the parent company. And this is that if something goes wrong with one of those brands, the problem can be contained and doesn't spill out onto other brands' products within the organisational portfolio. And indeed, this did happen to Nestlé some years ago with Perrier water. Perrier water was contaminated with benzene in a disaster in France, a production problem. But because Perrier was a completely standalone individual brand, the negative publicity from that, the sales decline that resulted, which Nestlé had to work very hard to turn around, that was restricted purely to Perrier and did not spill over into other brands within the organisation's portfolio. Whereas if all the brands had a connection to the Nestlé name, or indeed a single brand was used, the negative publicity and the sales decline could have spread much more widely. In a sense, these two reasons or two advantages that I've just discussed come together to create a further advantage of risk reduction. If you have many brands which are each independent standalone entities, you are less reliant on any one brand name. And so you are covering the bases more effectively, you're lowering your overall risk by being less reliant or less dependent on any one part of your portfolio. By sticking to a product category such as bottled water, you can still maintain economies of scale in production, in market research, research and development, etc. You won't get economies of scale in marketing because you have to market each brand individually, but you will still be able to maintain these other economies of scale and therefore benefit from lower costs as a result. And a house of brands strategy allows for very, very tightly focused, very specifically targeted marketing strategies. allows for a market to be segmented on a very precise basis in terms of different behavioural requirements, different demographic groups and lifestyles and so on. And a house of brand strategy also allows the parent organisation to be a specialist in many markets, to be seen as offering very specific products with their own unique identities and characteristics, and doesn't become a sort of a jack of all trades with everything sort of lumped together. So many advantages of a house of brand strategy. Ultimately, also, given the importance of distribution channels, the house of brand strategy allows organisations to achieve a larger share of physical shelf space in offline retail channels and digital shelf space in online and mobile channels. So very profound advantages. We've talked about Nestlé, but Procter & Gamble is another organisation that is widely known for pursuing a house of brands strategy very successfully. And here again, it's Premier Foods that I mentioned earlier. Other examples of organisations pursuing this strategy would be Unilever, Reckitt Benckiser and Beiersdorf. Okay, so we've looked at how you can use the house of brands or brand portfolio strategy to develop a new brand each time you want to introduce a new product. You develop a new brand name from scratch. We've seen that that has lots of advantages, but it's very expensive. And so some organisations simply don't have the resources to keep developing new standalone brands again and again each time they want to launch a new product. So let's look at the other two options, starting with using a combination of a new and an existing brand name through an endorsed brand or the sub-brand strategy. So here we have the examples that you saw earlier to look at in a little bit more detail. And if we just pick a couple of examples that we didn't talk about before, we have Cheerios breakfast cereal at the top. Cheerios is definitely the dominant brand there. You can see on the packaging it's shown in the largest letters, but you can also see a green section at the top of the box, and you might just be able to see Nestlé's corporate brand appearing there. So Nestlé definitely does endorse Cheerios. It's obvious that Cheerios come from the Nestlé organisation, part of Nestlé's stable or portfolio of products. And indeed, all of Nestlé's breakfast cereals have that same green section at the top of the box as a unifying device, so that the consumer, when presented with them all on the shop grocery store shelf, can see that there is some connection between them. And if they have already tried Cheerios and liked them, they may then be tempted to try another brand within the Nestlé breakfast cereal portfolio because they have the reassurance of the Nestlé quality. We can also look at the example of Doubletree by Hilton, a strong endorser. Hilton is known for large city centre hotels, large resorts, etc. Doubletree is a slightly more pared down offering, and in order to provide the consumer with the reassurance that this slightly cheaper hotel, slightly smaller, fewer facilities, etc., would still be excellent quality, the brand was set up as Doubletree by Hilton when it was originally introduced. Over time, the prominence of the Hilton name has declined because people have come to know and to trust the Doubletree brand on its own. But this endorsement strategy is often very, very useful when a new brand is being launched, a new product is being launched within a portfolio, to give the reassurance to the customer that they are not just, that they can expect a certain level of quality of service, product quality, etc. The reassurance that the bigger, better known name of Nestlé or Hilton provides. With sub-brands, the role that the two brands play is more even, more equal in driving consumer choice, as I said already. And Nestle uses a sub-brand strategy as well, alongside a house of brands strategy. The house of brands strategy, if you remember, was used in the premium segment of the market and with local brands that are specific to a country or a region. But in the more bottom end of the water market, not premium, but basic filtered water, Nestle used the sub-brand strategy with Nestle Aquarel, Nestle Pure Life, and Nestle Vera. And you can see from the images here that there's a great deal that unifies these brands. You can see that they come from the same portfolio. The Nestle name and the sub-brand name of Aquarel or Pure Life or Vera are roughly equal in proportion on the packaging. And with cheaper water, it is very important to have the reassurance that it is pure, that it is safe to drink. And that's why the Nestle name is so strong here. With a premium brand, you don't need that reassurance. Premium brands come from a particular source, a particular water source, a volcanic source, or whatever it happens to be. But with more basic prepared water, that reassurance of the corporate name is very important, and that's why Nestle use a different strategy at this lower end of the bottled water market. Okay, so we've looked at options 1 and 2. Let's now look at option 3, still within the world of brand extensions. And option 3 is where we simply apply an existing brand to a new product and we build up a branded house. We may extend our company brand name, as Virgin have done, to Virgin Trains, Virgin Money, Virgin Active, Virgin Media, Virgin Mobile, or we may use a family brand, as Unilever have done with Dove Men's Care. And you can see here the portfolio of products that now carry that brand name. So both of these are examples of brand extensions within the world of the branded house. So here we have the Virgin branded house again, and you can see that there is quite a lot that unifies these various bits of Virgin's business. They do have slightly different identities. It's not exactly the same. And so that's why the sub strategy branded house different identity is appropriate here. And the final strategy branded house same identity, as I mentioned earlier, an excellent example is Nike. Total consistency of branding across everything they do. Okay, so we've looked at the various strategies of introducing new products, whether we create a new brand from scratch or use some sort of brand extension. Let's now just stay on the topic of brand extension, because there are actually different types of brand extension, and it's important that you know and understand the differences between them. First of all, there are what's called line extensions, and these are subdivided into horizontal line extensions and vertical line extensions. And then there are category extensions. So very often people use the term brand extension rather inaccurately. They don't really say what kind of brand extension they're talking about, whether they're talking about a line extension or a category extension. So let me now explain to you what these different types of brand extension mean. Let's start with line extensions. A line extension is where we apply the existing brand name to a new product within the same product category. A new product that's designed to target a different market segment. The example I'm showing here is Starbucks. Starbucks extended into instant coffee. It's still the coffee market, and so it's a line extension. It's the same product category. The new market segment might not necessarily be different people. Do remember that markets can be segmented behaviourally. So the same person can want different types of coffee for different usage situations. So this line extension into instant coffee could be very much about targeting existing Starbucks coffee shop users who love their Starbucks Americano or their cappuccino, but want to try to recreate that Starbucks experience at home or in their office. These could be considered horizontal line extensions because they're all roughly at the same kind of price point per milliliter, per gram, or whatever. Another example there would be Coca-Cola with its various varieties, line extensions offering different types of drink within the overall cola market. And the term horizontal is used because they're all, broadly speaking, at the same price and quality point. And there's a reference for a paper at the bottom there if you want to read more about line extensions. Still sticking within line extensions, let's look now not at horizontal but at vertical line extensions. So here we're still applying an existing brand to a new product that targets a new market segment within the same product category. But here the new market segment is people who have a lower or higher ability to pay for the brand. So the vertical extensions will be offering lower or higher priced products. So an example here would be the Giorgio Armani organisation with its various line extensions, which move down in price as you move from left to right on this slide. The Giorgio Armani, the designer haute couture brand, if you like, being on the left, and Armani Exchange, the cheapest of the brands within the portfolio, on the right. And again, at the bottom here, there's some extra reading on vertical brand extensions if you want to know more. So we've looked at line extensions, horizontal ones and vertical ones. Let's look now at category extensions. Here we take the parent brand into a different product category. We take it on a journey away from what it has traditionally been applied to, and take it into a different product category altogether. So the example here is Pirelli. Now this is quite a radical category extension. Pirelli is known for making car tyres. Pirelli sponsors Formula One. Pirelli is associated with Formula One racing. It's all about cars and tyres. But here we have Pirelli footwear, taking the Pirelli brand into a very, very different product category, giving people who like the brand associations that come with Pirelli of speed and power, giving them the opportunity to experience those brand associations on their feet when they buy footwear. And again, there's some reference at the bottom for a paper by Aker and Keller about how consumers evaluate brand extensions. Now, way back in 1988, Tauber wrote a very famous paper about category extensions and suggested a number of general strategies for establishing a category extension. And I want you to do some work associated with this slide in preparation for our next class session. So the first of Tauber's strategies for a category extension is that you would introduce the same products in a different format. Can you think of an example of such a category extension? Tauber's second strategy, introduce products using the parent brand name that contain the brand's distinctive taste or ingredient or component, but in a new product category. Again, can you think of an example? Tauber's third strategy is for a category extension is to introduce companion products for the brand, things that sit alongside and might be complementary for the products that were originally marketed under the brand name. What examples can you think of there? Next, Tauber said you could introduce products that were relevant to the brand's customer base, what he called the customer franchise of the brand. Products in a different product category that would be appealing to the brand's existing customers, that would give them something else that was relevant and meaningful for them. Tauber's next strategy was that you could introduce products that capitalized on the firm's perceived expertise or technological know-how. So try to think of an example of category extension that fits that general strategy. Next, Tauber said you could introduce products that reflect the brand's distinctive benefit or attribute or feature. Once again, I'd like you to think of an example. And then introduce products that capitalize on the distinctive image or prestige of the brand. Not quite the same thing as the preceding one. The one before was introducing products that reflect the brand's distinctive benefit or attribute or feature, whereas now I want to think of an example of products that use a brand name in a different product category and are successful because they capitalize on the distinctive image or prestige of the brand. So some work for you to do for the next session, thinking of examples of these various general strategies for introducing and establishing a category extension. Now, with all brand extensions, there are certain assumptions that are made by brand management. It's generally assumed that consumers have some awareness of the parent brand. Otherwise, why would you extend it? If people aren't aware of a brand, there's no point in extending it either in line or category form. You have to concentrate first on building up and increasing its salience, its awareness, its depth and breadth of awareness. And then when it has a strong base of awareness, you can think about extending it. So the assumption is that consumers already know about the brand, and therefore it's worth extending the brand that they know into a new product category. It's also assumed that consumers have positive associations about the brand, that the knowledge nodes that they have of the brand in memory are positive ones, about quality, about a good experience, a brand that works for them, that delivers, that feels good, that has good performance. Again, otherwise, why would you bother extending it? So the whole point about extension, brand extension, is to capitalize on this existing awareness, on these existing positive associations, and to leverage them in a new product category, which is going to save time and money in launching a new product if you can immediately tap into that existing pool of awareness, that existing pool of positive associations, and get them linked quickly to a new product. It's going to be, all things being equal, a much more efficient, quicker and cheaper way of launching a new brand than to create a standalone brand from scratch. So launching a new product than doing it under a new brand name that has to be launched from scratch. It's also assumed that some of the positive associations that people hold about the parent brand will be evoked by the brand extension. When they look at the new product in the different product category, the positive associations will come to mind, will be meaningful, will actually be evoked. it's assumed that negative associations will not be transferred from the parent brand to the new product. And also it's assumed that negative associations will not be created by the brand extension. Sometimes that is not actually the case. Not all brand extensions, line extensions and category extensions are successful. Some do create negative associations for the parent brand and cause damage as a result. When are brand extensions appropriate? Brand extensions are appropriate when there is some degree of fit, connection, or similarity between the proposed extension and the parent brand. Now, that can be technical fit in terms of the way the products are made, that they're made on a similar basis. It can be fit in image, it can be fit in perceived benefits, but there has to be some kind of fit between the parent brand and the product that you propose to extend that brand name to. The term congruence is sometimes used in the literature to refer to this concept of fit. And again, there's a reference for some further reading there back to the Consumer's Evaluations of Brand Extensions, which mentions this all-important concept of fit. Fit's important in the way that consumers evaluate brand extensions in a number of ways. The consumer needs to perceive that there is some sort of complementarity between the parent product and the new extended product, that they can essentially be possible substitutes for one another, or they complement one another in some way. So think back to Starbucks. The Starbucks coffee that you get in a Starbucks store, Starbucks instant coffee, they are complementary and they are substitutable. If you can't get out to go to a Starbucks coffee shop and you have Starbucks instant coffee, you can get the same flavour at home or somewhere else. Fit is also important because you need to have, there needs to be a perception that the organisation making these products has the skills, the technological expertise, the know-how to make the new extension product. The consumer needs to recognise or to feel reassured that the firm is able to make this new product and that they're not extending into some crazy category that they don't have the capabilities, the skills, the know-how, the expertise to manufacture. So there needs to be some sort of product feature similarity or manufacturing similarity or some sort of brand concept consistency, or possibly even both. Now, the first two of these points really look at fit from the perspective of the consumer, the demand side perspective, and what they perceive to be important in a brand extension. If they perceive that that fit is not there, they are less likely to be drawn to a brand extension, less likely to evaluate it favourably. Whereas the last 2 points look at fit from the supply side perspective, looking at the organisation's manufacturing. Can it manufacture these products in a similar way in similar factories using similar technology and materials and so on? Can it put them together in the same kind of brand positioning, brand concept? This photograph shows Samsonite shoes, a rather ill-fated, short-lived category extension for Samsonite. Samsonite, as you may know, is a company that manufactures very high-end, expensive, high-quality luggage. Suitcases that would cost, upwards of $100, $150, £100 sterling, etc., and going way much higher. Very, very high quality at the top end of the luggage market. Some years ago, Samsonite decided to extend the brand to create a category extension into footwear. They also extended into outerwear, jackets, raincoats, etc. These products were clearly at much lower price points than the luggage, and the category extensions simply didn't work. The supposed link between them, the fit, was all about movement and travel. You need your luggage to travel, and when you're traveling, it's nice to have comfortable shoes, and you need to have easy to pack outerwear, lightweight raincoats, etc. But consumers clearly didn't recognize that fit. They didn't see that a company that was known for making excellent suitcases could suddenly turn itself into a company that made excellent shoes or raincoats. And so after a couple of years, Samsonite withdrew from these new product categories. So successful extensions will create the all-important points of parity and points of difference in the new extended product category. And they will also at the same time enhance points of parity and points of difference of the parent brand. So there'll be a positive feedback effect from the extension back to the parent brand. They will maximize advantages and minimize the disadvantages of brand extensions. More of that later. Here are some examples of category extensions. And for our next session, I'd like you to note against each one whether you think it was a success or a failure. Do you think consumers responded to the category extension positively, recognized that there was good fit between the parent brand and the extended product and went ahead and bought it? Or do you think that there was not a perception of fit and that the category extension was a failure? So first of all, we've got Vaseline Intensive Care Skin Lotion, a category extension that's been around for quite some time, extended out from the original Vaseline Petroleum Jelly. And we've got Colgate toothbrushes, Colgate extending from the toothpaste into the toothbrush product category. And we've got Colgate again, this time a more radical category extension into ready meals. Campbell's extending from soup to tomato sauce. Mars extending from chocolate bars to ice cream bars. Bic extending from disposable pens, ballpoint pens, to disposable lighters. And Bic again extending from disposable ballpoint pens to disposable perfumes and disposable underwear. Honda extending from cars into lawnmowers. Harley Davidson extending from motorbikes to wine coolers. Levi's extending from jeans to tailored suits. Clairol creating a new brand, a touch of yogurt shampoo. Gillette for oily hair only shampoo, extending out from the shaving category for Gillette. So what do you think about each of these category extensions? Make a note against each one on your copy of the slides as to whether you think it was a success or a failure, and bring your notes to our next class session. Oh, and I forgot one. Pepsi AM Breakfast Cola. Okay, the final thing that I want you to do for our class session is to do a bit of research on the advantages and the disadvantages of brand extensions. You can use the must-read paper. You can also use the additional papers which are available for you to read on my reading list on Canvas, and find as many advantages and disadvantages of brand extensions as you possibly can, and bring your notes to our next class session. And if you go back and re-listen to this video, you'll see I've given you quite a lot of cute clues as we have gone through. So I look forward to seeing you in class. But for now, that's all. Goodbye.